Hey everybody, Derek Vandelinder here with Angel Traders. Today I'm going to be going over the Angel Traders Divergence Course. Let's get started here. What is the actual meaning of divergence in Forex? Divergence appears on a bar chart when the price of an asset and an indicator, index, or other related asset move in opposite directions. In Angel Traders analysis, we make transaction decision by identifying situations of divergence, where the price of a currency pair and a set of relevant indicators such as the relative strength index, RSI, in Angel Traders' case, are moving in opposite direction that the price point is actually showing. For example, in the picture to the right, as you see here, we have a low happening right here. We have a shark fin right here. Comes up to the sentiment line. Makes another low. As you can see, our RSI is not respecting that. If our RSI was respecting that, it would be lower than the previous low. But this is a divergence because this low is lower than this low, but on our RSI, it's higher. How to correlate divergence with the relative strength index. Watching for divergence between price and the RSI indicator is another means of refining its application. Divergence occurs when a currency pair makes a new high or low in price, but the RSI does not make a corresponding new high or low in value. Bearish divergence when price makes a new high, but the RSI does not take it as a sell signal. Bullish divergence that is interpreted as a buy signal occurs when price makes a new low, but the RSI value does not. An example of bearish divergence can unfold as follows. A currency pair, for example GBP JPY, rises in price to 139.240, and the RSI makes a high reading of 75. After retracing slightly downward, the currency pair subsequently makes a new high of 139.500. But the RSI only rises to 65. The RSI has bearishly diverged from the movement of price. Let's take a look at a good bearish divergence setup. I want you to notice right here, the first shark fin closes at 144.68, creating a level of 82.851 on our RSI. That's right here. Now we make another high of 144.88 and our RSI closes at 75, creating a divergence because at a higher price, but our RSI is showing a lower level. Let's take a look at a bullish divergence setup. Notice how the first shark closes at 143.59, creating a level of 23.5 on our RSI. That's right here. Now we make another low of 143.39 and our RSI closes at 26.51, creating divergence because it is at a lower price right here, but our RSI is showing a higher level. Misinterpreting divergence, false divergence, and how to avoid it. Trading signals derived from divergence that are based on the RSI indicator can be difficult to read, and it sometimes is very misleading. When the market is in a strong trend in either direction, RSI and other oscillators do not function well and often give a false divergence signal. Any signs of divergence during a strong trend would be ambiguous at best. Divergence is best suited for confirming market moves and should be used in conjunction with Bollinger Bands and confirmations of the higher time frames with the Angel Traders strategy. Some of the key things of avoiding a false divergence and avoiding severe drawdown will be shown in the next slide. Rules to avoid false divergence. Avoid flared Bollinger Bands. When the bands are super flared, I stay far away from the market. Avoid bands that start to spread away from each other. Wait for a retest to near the sentiment line and then coming back, creating either a higher high or a lower low. Make sure the higher time frames are not squeezed to avoid a false divergence. I'm going to show you a few examples of false divergence so you can better understand how to avoid getting faked out. I want you to notice how the trade didn't even go close to the sentiment line. 50% of the time when you see a false divergence set up like this, you immediately go into drawdown. So as you notice right here, we came up, made a high, we had a shark fin. It didn't even come close to the sentiment line. As you see here, we're reading divergence at this point. It's higher, but because it didn't go to the sentiment line or near the sentiment line, this is an indication that it is false divergence. I'm going to show you what happens next. As you see, the market flew up. Didn't respect that divergence at all because it is a false divergence. Makes a very tiny move, then hits a ceiling for a major breakout. This is why I only trade divergent if it makes a strong move near the sentiment line. This gives the bands time to repair itself. Let's take another look at false divergence. In this example, notice how the bands are flaring up at almost a parallel level. This is a no trade rule for me. Also, notice how the price didn't make a move even near the sentiment line before reversing. Another strong sign that the false divergence will occur. Now let's see what happens next here. Boom. You're way out of profit. If you got in right here where that divergence happens, you're in drawdown. False divergence happens, and again, the market goes straight into the sky. If you take those trades, you better welcome drawdown as well. Let's take a look at one more false divergence. In this trade, it is tricky because our eyes see that the bands are wide, and that makes us want to take the trade. There are two reasons this was a false divergence. One, the market didn't move close to the sentiment line before making another low. As you see right here, it came down, gave us our shark fin, moved up, but it didn't come close enough to the sentiment line to really watch the divergence. You know, as soon as this came down, also I want you to notice how the bands kind of squeezed up right here just a little bit, and then as soon as it came down here, they started to flare away from each other. Always expect it to drop lower in this type of situation. As you see right here, the market just crashed. In this instance, if you follow the rules, you can indefinitely avoid a large amount of drawdown. If you would have entered off the bands, you would have faced some major drawdown. Now you can get a solid entry right here. Now let's get to the good divergence setups. This is where the money is at. These are the trades I love. Rules to getting into divergence setups with a very accurate results. Wait for the retest near the sentiment line on the Bollinger Band on our chart. Wait to take the trade outside of the Bollinger Band to avoid drawdown or false divergence. Make sure the bands are not super flared out. Check with the higher time frames that there are no major squeeze. Notice how the bands right here are not flaring out. They're actually fairly parallel. The market retested near the sentiment line right here and then made another high. Our price closed higher, but our RSI closed lower right here, showing a divergent move. Everything that you wanted played out in this trade. Came near the sentiment line. Bands are fairly parallel. You entered outside of the band and you made money. It's that simple. Notice how the bands are not majorly flaring out in this instance. They're actually going in a downward motion, but not too steep. The market retested near the sentiment line and then made another low. Our price closed lower, but our RSI closed higher, showing a divergent move. Make sure you're always taking the trade outside the bands. Everything that you wanted once again played out in this trade. Came near the sentiment line, you entered outside the band and made money. It took 2 minutes to move 8 pips. I can do this all day. Notice how the bands are not flaring too much, but are making a slight move up. The market retested near the sentiment line and then made another high. Our RSI closed higher, but our RSI closed lower, showing a divergent move. Enter outside the bands, and let's watch what happens. Immediately into profit. If you follow the rules, you will win these trades. I always visualize what I want to happen before I take the trade. It went to the sentiment line and then retested to create another high. This couldn't get any easier. Let's watch another perfect divergent setup. On these types of divergent moves, I like to wait to the 2.5 Bollinger Band before I enter. I can usually get 1 or 2 positions in. Notice how the bands are not flaring. The market retested near the sentiment line and then made another low. Our price closed lower, but our RSI closed higher, showing a divergent move. Remember to enter outside the bands if you want to avoid drawdown. The more you watch divergence setups, the better you will be able to trade them. Everything that you wanted played out in this trade came near the sentiment line. You entered outside the bands and you made money. This is why you take the trade outside of the Bollinger Bands. Notice in this trade you still may have gotten some drawdown. But this is a perfect time to get a better entry and make even more money. This is also why you do not over leverage on just one trade. Stacking positions is very beneficial, especially in these scenarios. It came out of its squeeze, made a shark fin, came back up to the sentiment line, made another low. You see the band start to flare out. This is how you are going to know right here, when the bands start to flare out in this type of situation, that it's going to go lower than you think. Let's watch what happens. As you see, it made a low to the 2.5 deviation. You got 2 positions in. Immediately, still divergent, you went directly into profit. It showed us a solid divergent setup, but ending up and dropping lower than we expected, resulting in being able to stack the 2 positions and actually get out both positions safely. Do not fear a little drawdown in this situation. Alright everybody, if you have any questions regarding divergence, please feel free to message me. I want to serve you as best as possible so that you can live the life that you truly want to live. Stick around in the Facebook group and the group chat so you get the best service you can possibly get. Remember, practice does not make perfect, only perfect practice makes perfect. I hope you all have a great week of trading and get to it.